Well, hello everybody and happy Christmas week. It's lovely to be with you. I want to empower you through the tool of astrology this week, and we are looking at the energies that are playing out from the 18th of December through to the 25th till Christmas Day. Now, if you didn't catch the video already that I did with David Warner Matheson only about a week ago, all on these topics of Christmas, solstice and Saturnalia, then check it out. It's my Christmas gift to everybody, along with David's very generous 20% off his courses offer for anyone who watches the Guiding Star video interview that we did together. So if you would like to learn all about mythology and its correlation to the stars, astro-theology, all these things are very important to understand if you want to be a good astrologer. So if you want to participate in those courses, and I highly recommend that you do, I found them very insightful. I thought I knew enough about celestial mechanics already. Not so. I feel like I've had a polar shift in doing David's course on celestial mechanics. It's utterly brilliant. So do check it out. Get your 20% off discount code. The courses are already very cheap, and when you add the discount to it, it's really a bargain. So check that out. Go to the video. The details are all there. I also have a really terrific video that was up last week with Gaia, the horary astrologer, now working with Guiding Star. And we are so excited to welcome Gaia here. I just want to mention her again. If you have a pinpointed question and you want a quick answer to that question, because at the moment, her wait list is not as long as mine. If you need a quick answer to some question for your life, she is the woman for you. She's an utterly brilliant astrologer. I've had people who you would recognize as very high level astrologers who happen to watch my channel who've booked in to see her because they can recognize her tremendous talent and her great gift of compassion as well. So check that out. Check out the video, and she's offering her readings for a discounted price at the moment too. And you don't need a birth time to do a horary astrology reading at all. This is really, really helpful. So all you need is your question. Ask it of Gaia, and she will tell you what the chart that she cast for the moment you ask the question, she receives the question rather, has to say in answer to your query. Fantastic method of astrology. Do check that out. Also, I'd encourage everybody to leave their mundane astrology questions, and mundane astrology is just big world events. Leave your questions for Gaia in the comments section to this video, or any video for that matter, but particularly the most relevant video on my channel, because she's going to be answering a different mundane astrology or world event question for us every month using horary astrology. So if you've got a question about everything that's going on in the world, and believe me, we all do have big questions about what the hell is going on in the world, then leave those questions for Gaia. She will pick one and answer it every month. Very exciting. So let's move into this week's astrology. The first thing we want to look at, and I always start with, is I look at the best days of the week coming up. And remember, I'm in Australia. I'm using Australian Eastern Standard Time for what I'm seeing. If you're in other parts of the world, then you may need to double check for yourself these electional times. And if you're in the US, then we're pretty much a day ahead of the US here in Australia, particularly anyone on the west coast of the US. So just you could interpret what I'm saying as a day, being a day behind what I say. Hope that makes sense. The time zones can make astrology a little bit more complex, so keep that in mind. And we also need to be conscious of the void of course moon as well. We need to avoid instigating anything under a void of course moon. You can get an app like iLuna to help you figure out when the void of course moons are occurring in your part of the world. And taking action when the moon is void of course will often see nothing result from that action you've taken. No big dramas. So it can be positive in that sense. You can take action and, be assured that there's no big drama that's going to come out of it. Or no results from your efforts. So make up your mind, do you want to use the void of course moon or not, with that understanding behind it. But the best days this week, 18th and 19th of December, are looking very good. They're great days, both of them, to optimistically look at the future, to make some future plans, to think big picture about life and get a big picture perspective, not be focused so much on the small details. So these days could be very lucky and blessed for some people, depending on what's happening in your natal horoscope. 18th and 19th can really take you forward into your future and give you kind of a lucky break, so to speak. So it's a good day to launch almost anything under that energy, because there's an energy of luck and abundance that comes with these particular days. And on the 25th of December, we have another auspicious day. And we're looking at the type of energy that this is good for is for reinvention, re-emergence, turning over a new leaf, taking action to dissolve some sort of unwanted habits or life circumstances and making a fresh start. So that's a beautiful energy for Christmas Day. Christmas Day is very, very significant. People say, it's not really tied to anything, but it is tied to a certain component of the solstice and Saturnalia celebrations. Once again, check out my video with David to understand why the 25th is an important date to observe. Now, as for out of bounds planets, this week we have Moon and Mercury doing a bit of a song and dance with out of bounds energy. Both the Moon and Mercury are out of bounds from the 18th to the 22nd, so this could bring many unexpected and significant events into our lives now, both personally and in the world. When the planets are out of bounds, they're a little bit like wild card energies. They have this energy of Uranus about them, and Uranus is surprises, shocks, unexpected things happening. So the Moon is unexpected things maybe happening with the masses in mundane astrology, the populace. Mercury might be unexpected things happening with regard to business affairs or learning capacity or new skills that you're developing personally. These sorts of mercurial and moon-based things. Mercury is also going to continue to be out of bounds right through until Christmas Day and beyond, actually. So we could expect that during this time, some of the gifts of Mercury out of bounds can be things like genius level ideas, those goosebump moments when it's like, aha, ta-ching. But on the shadow side, we can also have, and there's shadow and light and everything, remember, we might also have some erratic thoughts, maybe some nervous tension as well. So have the magnesium handy to help you out with that if you're prone to a bit of nervous tension and anxiety. Let's look now at the energy focuses for the week ahead. On December the 21st, we have Mercury making a trine to Uranus. And here is Mercury over here in Capricorn making a trine to Uranus in Taurus. So that is the first aspect that's playing out. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single aspect that's playing out this week. I'm just going to tell you what they are. And we have a very special focus this week on our astrologically significant energy. Stay tuned. You'll find out what it is in just a second. Then on the 22nd of December, we have the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere and the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. Again, if you're interested in how the solstices work and why it's winter up in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern hemisphere when we have this solstice, then do check out that video with David. But this is I would say this is the best astrological time for creating New Year's resolutions. The 1st of January is really only a calendar date. It is not astrologically significant. If you want to use energy to your advantage, make your New Year's resolutions at solstice. That is the far better time to implement that energy. Then also on December the 22nd, we have the Sun moving into Capricorn, which is always the significator of solstice anyway. So Sun moving into Capricorn. Happy birthday to all Capricornian Sun people who are watching this video, and welcome to your birthday season. Then on December the 24th, we have, and this one's quite important, very important actually, but it's not the energy that we're going to focus on for this particular video. December the 24th is the third, and thank God, the final Saturn-Uranus square on Christmas Eve. So everyone is going to breathe a sigh of relief to have this god-awful square aspect that has been the big cause behind a lot of the that's been going down over the last year. We're so happy to see it end. So let the breath you've been holding out at long last. As I said, this energy has been the biggest cause of the horrors of 2021. And now this is the climatic point, the final hit, the final last hurrah, so to speak, of this energy. It has brought us restrictive changes because we've got freedom, Uranus, and liberty, Uranus, squaring off with restriction and authority and control, Saturn, and they've been doing this angry dance all year long. It's been made even worse because Uranus has been retrograde for 6 months of this year, which it is every year, but that Uranus retrograde internalizes the need for liberation and freedom, and we're not demonstrating it, we're not actioning it when Uranus is retrograde. And so it's been a really tough time while Uranus has been retrograde. I cannot wait for Uranus to turn direct. Oh my God, I'm just like hanging for that. I feel like I'm on the edge of a cliff, holding on by my fingernails, just waiting for Uranus to turn direct. But that's why we've had such a rough time, especially in the second half of 2021, because that's when Uranus has been retrograde. So this has been the bringer of all the restrictive changes, all the unexpected restrictions all year long. And with this last hurrah, we might actually see, warning, one final push by the oligarchy to that end. So it's an energy that can bring in changes that we don't particularly want. But then they're going to start to separate. The square aspect will start to separate, thank God. Look, naturally this could be quite frustrating, but it's the final time that this energy will do this dance. So deep breath, little way to go. And remember, it's helpful to remember what this is all ushering in. Okay, a new age with its shadow and light energies. The age of Aquarius is part of what's being ushered in here. It's been, gently being ushered in over the last couple of 100 years, but this has been a big sort of momentum forward with what's been occurring. But a lot of what's being ushered in are these new communities, independent communities, bottom up instead of top down approach to things. But you've got to shift out the old crap before the new can emerge. And let me just say, the old order of things are hanging on for dear life and don't want to let go. But they're going to be swept aside by the new age that wants to come in, thank goodness. But this might be the final push to wake people up, to allow that new age to be born. So big warnings, hazard lights. We're not through it yet, but we are coming to the conclusion. Just keep on going. In the positive though, this might provide us with the push that we need personally to get rid of the things in our lives that are blocking us, Saturn, and preventing us from living the lives of freedom and liberation, Uranus, that all humans deserve to know. So maybe you've been umming and ahhing about whether you'll go and join that alternative community or whether you'll hook up with a group on Facebook that are, going, let's say, against the mainstream narrative. You've been, will I, won't I, whatever. And this could be the final push that you need to support you in doing that potentially. So it's, warning about that. We are coming up to that final last hurrah. Now, that's enough on that topic. I really would rather encourage people than talk about some of the challenges. And that said, keep in mind, it's so good that this is ending. It's really good that this is the last time. Just let's drive forward. December the 19th is what I want to talk about. So I've told you all the energies that are key this week. Now we're going to take a step back from what I've just been talking about, December the 24th, back to the 19th. And this is when Venus begins its retrograde period in Capricorn. This is the rarest of the retrograde cycles. Venus goes retrograde least of all the planets, and she's going to be retracing her steps in the sky. And I'm going to explain how this works in just a minute. But this can make the giving and receiving of love a bit of a challenge now. Some may experience sadness in love due to this energy, or some kind of delays or blocks in being with your loved one physically or emotionally at this time. Lovers from the past can return into our lives, and we're unlikely to be with them for the long term if that does occur. So we might have someone from high school come back into our life and we think, fantastic, I always had the hots for that person. And, you're together for a week and then it's all over, So be warned about that. That is a hallmark of Venus retrograde transits. And similarly, You should act with caution if you encounter a new love during this time, because if you start a new relationship, we're going to talk about this further very shortly, but if you start a new relationship during this period, you are establishing a chart for that relationship with a retrograde Venus in it. That's not healthy for relationships. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what it means to have Venus retrograde in the birth chart and in an establishment chart for a relationship in just a second. For other people, I'm sorry about the noises. My Facebook notifications, I don't know how to turn them off on my computer, so I do apologize for those irritations in the background. But for others, there might be, under Venus retrograde, a bit of a drop in personal hygiene or concern for their appearance. This is also a hallmark of Venus retrograde. We're kind of not interested in the beautification of ourselves or the self-love that is required to dress up and look nice or take care of ourselves in some manner. You probably, I would say, would need to have a bit of an inclination to being a bit of a slob anyway, but you might notice that it's more prevalent out there in the world during this time of Venus retrograde. And it's time to absolutely avoid any kinds of cosmetic surgeries, haircuts, beauty, day spa treatments, injections and, resurfacing this, that, and the other, because you will not be happy with the results. The results will not satisfy, and you'll get a haircut and think, oh, that looks awful, or you'll have some cosmetic surgery and it'll be like, tear your hair out. I spent all that money and it looks like this. Whoa, we don't want that to happen. So don't even go there during Venus retrograde. But Venus retrograde is a time to focus on perfecting the Venusian areas of our life, particularly our self-love, particularly our relationship skills. And this will usually be wrought from the inside out. So take the time to go within now and explore where you're self-sabotaging, in love, in your self-love, self-sabotaging yourself with your finances and, the growth of your finances. Where are you sort of holding yourself back or not getting what you're worth or cutting yourself short? This energy can, if we work with Venus retrograde wisely, it can set you free by the time that the retrograde period ends on the 29th of January. And that's when Venus will become the beautiful morning star. We're going to be talking about that. It's something very dear to my heart and very special. So let's talk about Venus retrograde. It's happening from December the 19th to January the 29th. Now, we have already been in the shadow period. I'm going to talk about the effects of the shadow period in a minute. But astronomically, astrologically, and mythology, what is Venus all about? For those who are new to astrology and want to find out. If you know what Venus is all about and you want to skip ahead, go right ahead. But for anybody new, as in astronomy, Venus is the only planet that can cause shadows on the Earth. The moon can, but the moon is a luminary. We classify it as a planet here, in astrological circles, but in astronomy the moon is a luminary, so we don't count the fact that the moon can cast shadows. Venus is the only planet that can shine so brightly that she can cast shadows on Earth. Fascinating, hey? It takes 234 Earth days for Venus to do one rotation, one spin. She spins super slowly. Slowest rotation cycle of any planet. She's also the hottest planet in the solar system. Now, you would think that Mercury, being closer to the sun, would be much hotter. Not so. Venus is covered in clouds of sulfur dioxide, so any heat that comes to Venus is trapped within those sulfur dioxide clouds, and she has a far hotter surface area than Mercury does, despite the proximity to the sun. So she's the hottest planet in the solar system as well. Hot and slow is Venus. Now, in mythologies, you will recognize the name Venus as being the Roman goddess of love, or Aphrodite was her Greek goddess name. She was the goddess of love and the goddess of beauty. She governed in mythologies. She was the goddess of fertility, romance, prosperity, and victory. Often ancient cultures looked to Venus as a sign of war or an indicator of war. She was, in many senses, a war goddess as much as Mars was the war god. Now, that's very interesting, and not all cultures, not all mythological cultures had that going on, but some did. I think the Mayan, from memory, had that, a very strong component of their mythological pantheon. Julius Caesar, in history, he considered that Venus was the ancestor of the Roman peoples. You'd have to have a pretty big ego, wouldn't you, to think that? But hey, we're talking Julius Caesar, so no surprises there. But some mythologies say that Venus was the daughter of the god Zeus and the goddess Dione. That's one version of how she came to be, that she was the creation of these two gods. But other mythologies say that she was birthed from the sea after Saturn castrated his father Uranus, and the member fell to earth, and this dismembered part fell into the oceans of the earth, or Gaia, and from those waters, those womb-like waters of the earth, emerged Venus, or Aphrodite, birthed from the sea foam. So very fascinating little bit of mythology there. Yeah, I'm not sure which one I prefer. They're both intriguing, to say the least. Now, in astrology, Venus represents our enjoyment of pleasure and delight. She represents our love relationships and connections with people in general. The things we need to live a comfortable life are represented by Venus as well. So our material possessions, our nice little velvet office chair, or our cozy couch, or all the lovely things in our life that make life an enjoyable delight. Venus, wherever she sits in the chart, she's going to tell us about what we value and what we love. Venus in Cancer might say we love a beautiful garden, or we love to have our hands in the earth, or we love pretty flowers or something, because Cancer rules those like garden spaces. So we might love those things with Venus in Cancer. Venus can also tell us, wherever she sits in the chart, how we love, how we show our love to people. Venus in Gemini might display as being rather cheeky and flirty and playful in how a person with Venus in Gemini displays love. What we perceive we need in order for life to be more comfortable and pleasurable is also represented by where Venus sits in the chart. And I underline the word perceive there, because it's our perception of what we need. Now, if you've got Jupiter conjunct with Venus in the chart, you might have a perception that you need, big, larger than life luxuries and pleasures in order to be comfortable and pleasurable in life. But if your Venus is in maybe a more pinched sign like Capricorn, you might, or conjunct with Saturn, which is something I have, then you might, perceive that you just need the necessities of life in order to get by. And so we can look at where Venus sits, that tells us what we perceive we need in order to be comfortable. She is all about self-love and the need to love self first in order to be able to have something to give in love to another. She teaches us to love beauty, however hard it is to find in other people. And if we really hone into and strengthen our Venus, we learn to look for the beauty in others instead of judging others as insufficient or lacking in some way. We become more diplomatic. Venus rules the sign of both Taurus and Libra is the diplomatic sign. And we can learn with our Venus to be diplomatic in our views towards the other. Something astrology taught me actually was that everybody is wired a certain way for a reason, usually a karmic reason. And so many people, even if they're rubbing me the wrong way, it's usually that they are just displaying their astrological wiring, whatever that happens to be. And that's okay. We tend to view things with compassion and see the beauty in others when we can activate and strengthen our Venus appropriately. As I said, Venus rules Taurus and Libra, both of which have associations with beauty, relationships, and pleasures. Taurus is that of sort of the natural beauty, the natural realm, nature. Taurus is also the beauty that we find in feeling secure in the world. When we feel secure and safe in the world materially with money or resources that support our journey and life in general, we find that we're more relaxed and we can be more ourselves because we're not stressing and striving and trying to get what we need to survive. So there's beauty in having enough that makes us satisfied and able to relax a little and be fully in ourselves. Taurus is also the 5 senses: touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. Self-love and self-nurturance are Taurus energies that Venus governs also. Venus governs Libra, and Libra is the sophisticated beauty as opposed to the natural beauty. So here we've got kind of the Grace Kelly effect, so to speak. There's refinement, there's the classic beauty, the balance, the harmony, both in looks and spirit and demeanor. There is diplomacy here with Venus's governance of Libra, and it's all about Libra relationship and connection with others. So Venus governs all of these things and so much more. Now, I want to talk about when Venus is retrograde in a birth chart. I'm going to talk about what retrograde is in a minute, but for those of you who have retrograde Venus in your birth chart, what effects does it tend to give in our lives? And you might like to note these things down as some of the effects that we might observe in our lives in the coming days when Venus goes retrograde by transit for all of us. So it's a planet, when something is retrograde, it looks like it's going backwards in the sky. From our vantage point on Earth, it's not really going backwards, it's an optical illusion, so to speak. You might like to check out this little video that explains what retrograde motion is. And big thanks to Brian Cox and the BBC for putting this little snippet out there in the world. And I hope this helps you understand how retrograde motion works.
The Greeks named them planetes, or wandering stars, and we've kept the name planet to describe them. This is Mars, photographed once a week over a period of months. Rather than travelling in a straight line across the background of the stars, it occasionally changes direction and loops back on itself. It's very hard to explain these retrograde loops if the Earth is at the centre of the universe.
Well, understanding the retrograde motion of Mars didn't come easy. That's why it took over 2,000 years to work out. But I'm going to explain it using a stick and some rocks. The key thing is that the Earth is not at the centre of the solar system. The Sun is. And the Earth and Mars go around it in almost circular orbits. So when Mars is viewed from the Earth, then it's seen on the sky. In fact, on the constellations of the zodiac. So as Mars orbits around and the Earth orbits around, then from that position, Mars will look like it's there on the sky. Mars moves and the Earth moves in that position, and Mars moves in that direction across the sky, and again in that position Mars will be here. So you see it's moving in a straight line across the sky. But what happens when the Earth overtakes Mars? Then look at the line of sight. Mars has moved back to there. It's reversed its direction, and it continues to do that until the Earth gets round to somewhere like there, and Mars is here, and then you see the line of sight means that it started moving that way again. So Mars has executed that strange looping motion on the sky because the Earth overtook Mars on the inside, and that's why the retrograde motion happens. Simple.
So while that video speaks of Mars and its retrograde motion, the same applies for Venus. The only difference is that Venus is on the inside of the Earth. So we have the Sun, we have Mercury, we have Venus, and then we have the Earth. So Venus is sitting between the Earth and the Sun. And that the difference is that with Mars, Mars is the one after the Earth. So the Earth is between Mars and the Sun. That's the difference. But the retrograde effect is still the same. It is where the planet is seen against a backdrop of stars from our angle of view here on Earth. So same deal. The difference though with Mars and Venus, apart from being where they sit in relationship to the Earth and the Sun, one of the key differences is that Venus will disappear in the glare of the Sun when she goes retrograde. This is just something that happens with Venus retrograde cycle. With Mars, that never occurs because a Mars retrograde tends to happen when the Sun is here, the Earth is here, and Mars is there. So Mars and the Sun are far apart from one another. And it's usually, if you're looking at an astrological chart, Mars goes retrograde when it is opposite the Sun in the sky. Venus goes retrograde when she sits between the Earth and the Sun. She's in the middle, and so she gets lost from our vantage point on Earth. She gets lost in the glare of the Sun during her retrograde process. We'll look a little bit more at this on the chart in just a second. Retrograde planets are always closer to the Earth than they are at other times when they're not retrograde. It's when a planet is closest to the Earth. So their effects, their energetic effects upon us here on Earth are stronger because they're physically closer in the sky. Now, when we're born with a retrograde Venus, a Venus looking like it's going backwards in the sky, it turns all that Venus represents inwards in our lives. For example, it can result, instead of expressing our lovableness outwards, we turn our lovableness or our feelings of unlovableness inwards. And we're not expressing it outwardly. So that often exhibits as a sensation or a feeling or a perception that we are not worthy, that we're not lovable. So we don't express it outwards in life because we feel threatened if we do, or we feel that it will be rejected if we do, that we won't be loved in return if we do. So we keep things to ourselves, and we feel oftentimes with a retrograde Venus unlovable, or we have a perception that love is hard to achieve, or that we're not beautiful enough. As I said, it's a sense of things rather than the reality. It's also a sense of things rather than an external event having caused this to be the case. So don't look outside of you saying, oh, it was my mum and dad when I was growing up, or it was because I lived in this crappy little town and now I feel this way. No, it's actually an internal energy. It's possibly quite karmic too. So if you've got a retrograde Venus, maybe it's worth exploring karmic astrology to understand it in a deeper way. A retrograde Venus because of this, can block our capacity to show affection to other people because we're afraid of rejection from others. And that can make us a late bloomer with relationships. We feel lame or we feel awkward with love. Now, we can take this to a polaric extreme sometimes because remember, there's a lot of yin-yang in astrology, and we can sort of become defensive about our unlovableness, and we can need way more assurance or reassurance than other people might. Do you really love me? We might say to our partner a lot to the point where they get sick of hearing it because we need this constant affirmation because there's so much self-doubt about it in our hearts. But I have to say, and this is good news for anyone with a retrograde Venus, that this does ease after the age of 25 when Venus reaches its maturation in Vedic astrology. So obviously it's a little challenging to have a retrograde Venus in your natal chart, but it's an important component of our life on Earth is experiencing love, connection, and enjoying pleasure and delight. And this retrograde Venus holding this back in our lives does feel heavy and difficult. But there is good news coming, okay? So don't sort of like, oh, woe is me, and I give up kind of thing. Don't go there, because hold on, the good news is coming. I want to talk a little bit further about some of the effects of a retrograde Venus. It can make you seek love and affection from very eccentric people in life, people who are outside the sort of the mainstream ideal, because we tend to be looking for this sense of belonging and acceptance that we haven't got for ourselves, and we go looking for it outside ourselves, and we gravitate to society's, let's call them unacceptable people. Don't have to be, like that's an inverted commas word, the unacceptable people. Everybody is acceptable, and I love, the renegades and the bohemians and the people who live outside the mainstream. They're my favorite people. But we can gravitate to these sorts of people with a retrograde Venus in order to try and find our place, to try and fit in, because mainstream doesn't cut it for us. To me, that's a good thing. Who wants to be mainstream anyway? Yawn, boring. But people with a Venus retrograde, they also, and this is one of the good things about them, one of the things I love about Venus retrograde people is that they go a lot deeper with what they need in relationships than other people with a direct motion Venus. Venus retrograde people are not shallow. There's other signatures besides retrograde Venus that can cause a person to not be shallow in relationships. This is not the only one, but it's one of them. And it means that you won't be interested in talking about the weather with your partner or what happened on the latest Kardashian BS episode. You're not into that stuff. You want deep, you want meaningful, you want substance in relationships. And let's face it, that is very difficult to find in the world. And so again, we have to sort of be patient and bide our time and sift through a lot of shallowness in order to find the deep waters. We're going to always prefer to be in deep conversation with someone at a party than the one dancing on the tabletop with a lampshade on our heads. That's not Venus retrograde energy. So the sole intent in evolutionary astrology is actually to heal a wound that has occurred to the soul in a previous lifetime from a relationship. And we're learning to love and honor the self in order to attract love in this lifetime. That's the purpose. That's your mission, Venus retrograde people. Your success in being able to do this is going to determine your success in relationships in this incarnation. So again, I come back to doing karmic astrology, doing the past life work, doing the self work, loving and honoring the self, and whatever you need to do to manifest that in your energy experience is so important if you want to know true love in life. Now, Venus retrograde can make also the timing of relationships a little bit out of whack, so to speak. For example, the woman of your dreams lives on the other side of the planet. You can't get together because it's freaking COVID, that kind of stuff. Parents might keep you apart, for example. That might be another thing. It's like when I say the timing is out of whack, there's circumstances like the planets don't feel like they're quite aligning in your favor to help the love blossom in life. I bet Romeo and Juliet had retro Venus in their charts, both of them, considering their story. So this is the piece of gold that I want you to cling to if you have Venus retrograde in your chart. When the progressed chart shows Venus changing direction from retrograde motion to forward motion, that is going to be a key change in your life. A key 180-degree turnaround with relationships, because at that moment Venus will no longer be retrograde and will be in forward motion in your progressed chart. And it's like suddenly you come into the light of what it is to have a progressed Venus. So we can make great strides forward in self-love at this time. We make great strides forward in relationships at this time. Prosperity flourishes, and our ability to live life with pleasure and delight just blossoms. We begin to express these Venus qualities outward with ease. It's a sign that the karmic wound is healed when this occurs. So there'll be work to be done prior to this in life. And then at some point in life, and you'll need to sort of calculate this with an astrologer, or if you know how to use astrological software, you can calculate that as well. But there will be a turning point at a certain age when suddenly you come into the light and you're out of that healing process. So have hope, my friends. There is purpose to what you're going through. There is meaning to what you're going through, and it will end for you. Also, in Vedic astrology at age 25, I mentioned this earlier, Venus reaches its maturation phase. And so this is a great time for all of us to come into our own sense of self with Venus themes, In fact, in Vedic astrology, it's advisable for everybody to not commit in relationships until after Venus matures. Because up until then, whether Venus is retrograde or in forward motion in your own chart, we still don't know what we want in love and relationships until after we turn 25 and Venus matures. I got married before I was 25, and my ex-husband was, we were both 23, and we did not fully know who we were or what we wanted. And what was the result? We're no longer together, even though we probably would have been great friends if we'd have met when we were 28 or something, and things would have been fine. Before that, we neither of us had any idea about what we really wanted and what we wanted our lives to look like and be. And so, yeah, it's an encouragement in Vedic astrology to not commit until after Venus has matured. Venus retrograde, this Venus retrograde, the one that we're about to go through, let's explore what that is all about. Well, on the 18th of November, Venus, and let's have a look up here. Here is Venus, my little green planet. Venus reached 11 degrees of Capricorn on the 18th of November. So we might I'll move, just to help things be clearer, I'll move Mercury a bit out of the way there and make a bit of space so that I can explain on my board. So this is 11 degrees, let's say. When Venus hit there, that point at 11 degrees, she entered what is called the shadow period. At this time, she was traveling forward in the sky, a little bit more every day, until she reached where she's about to reach on the 19th of December, which is at 26 degrees of Capricorn, sort of almost in a conjunction there with Pluto. So that'll be our 26 degree mark right there. She hits that on the 19th of December, and boom, that's when, from our vantage point on Earth, she starts to look like she's going backwards in the sky. She will move from this point at 26 degrees of Capricorn over the ensuing 40 days back to this point, 11 degrees. And that's why it's called the shadow period, because when Venus moving direct enters this 11 degree mark, she's in the zone of where she's going to retrograde in the coming days. So by this time she's moved back here, and it'll be the 29th of January when she's back at that 11 degree mark again, on the 29th of January. And on the 29th of January she turns direct again, and she begins her third move across this zone of the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Back to 26 degrees. It will be the 3rd of March when she hits that 26, 27 degree mark of Capricorn again. And by this stage, she will be together with Mars. Mars will join her there with Pluto. That'll be an interesting energy that we'll explore at that time. So that's how retrograde motion works. There's a moving forward through a certain zone of the sky, then a perception of her moving backwards through a certain zone of the sky, and then forwards again. So the last time that Venus was retrograde in Capricorn was at the end of 2013 and the beginning of 2014. And prior to that, it was during January 2006 that she was retrograding in Capricorn. So stop for a minute and think about your life regarding love and financial experiences. What was going on in 2013, 2014, sort of January 2014, or January 2006 that was significant with love and money? Because those things might be about to have a repeat again during this phase, during this time. So forewarned, forearmed. You can look back and say, okay, that's what I was going through. That was the experience that I was having. I'm so ready. Bring it on. I'll know what to expect, and I'll be able to navigate it so much wiser, so much better this time around. Let's talk about Venus return. If you have your natal Venus placement between 11 degrees of Capricorn and 26 degrees of Capricorn, you're going to be having 3 Venus returns during this time. 3. One when Venus, who's already traveled across your natal Venus by now, and then a second when Venus goes backwards over your natal Venus, and then a third when Venus goes for the final time across your Venus. 3 times you will have a hit if you've got natal Venus here, to your natal Venus placement. We get a Venus return annually. Every one of us will have a Venus return annually, but not everybody has 3 hits of Venus in the 1 year. This is it is quite rare. And it always gives us clues to our love and financial life for the year ahead whenever we have the Venus return. So it's a great idea to orchestrate some sort of luxurious experience or some sort of indulgence or some sort of pleasure at the time of your Venus return in order to welcome in the energy what you would like to see manifest for you in the year ahead. You can work with the energy of the return chart in that way. You will set a tone for pleasure and delight in the year ahead until your next Venus return. So it's particularly important for my lovely friends who have Venus in this zone of the sky natally that they schedule these sorts of things on the 3rd and final hit when Venus is direct. So you're going to get 3 hits, but don't schedule these pleasures and delights and celebrations and what have you when Venus is going retrograde. Do it when Venus is direct across this for the 3rd and final time. So you're going to need to know where your natal Venus falls in order to organize and orchestrate this. There's a couple of ways you could do this. You can go to a site like astroseek.com and cast a chart for your Venus return through their resources there. It's a wonderful site for this sort of thing. But if you don't know how to find your Venus in the chart to find this out, you could do my course on how to read your own chart for $35. Just head to the Guiding Star website and the Learn Astrology page will have all the info that you need if you want to find out if your Venus is going to be affected by this return phenomena this time around. So we've already kind of discussed this a little bit. I want to just mention it again. This is a long video introduction because this is such an important event, Venus retrograde. It's so rare and it is always a pivotal point. What can we expect? Don't look for new love or romance to start because, as I said earlier, it will be unlikely to last. Lovers from the past can come back into our lives, but once again, they will be unlikely to last as well. Let past lovers stay in the past. No regrets. Don't get any cosmetic surgery done. Don't get any beauty treatments. Don't get any haircuts done. Do not get married and do not get engaged under a Venus retrograde. You will carry Venus retrograde energy in the chart of your wedding and relationship. You don't want that. Venus is a planet of choice. It rules our decision making and our choices. And if we make decisions regarding love and money and resources when Venus is retrograde, we will ultimately regret our decisions. So, like I said, we will establish a chart for a new relationship or a new marriage or a chart for our experience with the new couch that we've bought or the new haircut that we've got. We establish a chart for that experience with that thing or that person, and it has Venus retrograde in it, and this will impact the whole duration of that relationship, your use of that couch, the time you've got that haircut until it grows out. You'll have that Venus retrograde frustration happening. But in the positive, there is a good thing that you can see in a Venus retrograde period. If you break up with a partner during Venus retrograde, that breakup will not last. You'll end up getting back together when Venus goes direct again. So if your boyfriend dumps you during this time, just sit tight, sit back, do some knitting, polish your nails, whatever, and just wait, because when Venus goes direct, it'll all be back together again and you're going to be fine. So Venus, when it's in Capricorn, what does it do? What's its effect? Well, it's a cardinal sign, Capricorn, and we tend to want to start new things when Venus is in Capricorn. Like cardinal energy is to begin things. So you're going to want to start things during this time, but it's not a good idea to start Venus things during this time because of the retrograde. So my advice, put things on hold until Venus goes direct on the 29th. Then go for your life. Get into it. Start whatever you need to start. This is an energy, Venus in Capricorn, that can be quite predictable. We tend to not that Capricorn's a predictable sign, but it's very traditional and does what is expected of it. So we might tend to take a very responsible and dutiful approach to our relationship and to our finances while Venus is in Capricorn. We can be quite somber and cautious about what we do with our love relationships as well. And maybe this is a bonus during Venus retrograde season, because we're less likely to rush in and make foolish choices that we end up regretting because we've got this more serious, somber approach in Capricorn. We can, or people with Venus in Capricorn natally can tend to be quite cool and detached in love. And for some people, that can be really attractive. You know, that cool customer who doesn't lose their demeanor over their infatuations. They're just Mr. Cool. That is Venus in Capricorn. Love it. And that can be particularly appealing to a lot of people at this time. So we might find that energy is more present in the world right now. We could also feel that our partners at this time, while Venus is in Capricorn, our partners might feel like they're lacking some sort of warmth or spontaneity. This can be a cause for concern during Venus retrograde, especially if we are feeling sensitized about our worthiness, and then our partner's a bit more cool and detached and not affectionate like they usually would be, and then we sort of like, I must really suck and he doesn't love me anymore, and we struggle because that warmth in our relationships kind of takes a bit of a dip. So knowledge is power. Know where that's coming from if that's what you're experiencing. Worrying about our image in love can cause hang-ups while Venus is in Capricorn, and even paranoia for some people, depending on their chart configuration natally. So we need to consciously try to handle things as lightly as possible. This is a heavy energy, Venus in Capricorn. Even though Venus and Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, are friends in astrology, it's still a heavy sign, and it's difficult to handle things lightly, but we need to be conscious about doing so, not getting bogged down, not going down the rabbit hole of overthinking our relationships or overanalyzing. We can become very serious about our relationships under this influence, and as such, we might be even taking things too seriously and too heavy duty. So lighten up, And because this is a sign of commitment, it likes that traditional approach to relationships. When Venus is in Capricorn, we might suddenly get the impetus to look to commit. But I'm warning you, wait until Venus is no longer retrograde. Fine if it's in Capricorn, but not when it's retrograde. Don't pop the question while Venus is retrograde, even if you feel the impulse to want to try and commit to your partner. Wait till it goes direct and then make that move. And we're all going to, regardless of what we've got in our natal chart, we're all going to take this dutiful, serious, structured approach to our money now as well. Venus is money and possessions in general. So many of us might start a rainy day savings account or investing in blue chip long-term stocks or investments. We might delight in finding bargains now. Perhaps we might even start to be a little bit stingy too, unless we've got other mitigating factors in our natal chart. But, this is an energy, Venus in Capricorn. When we go shopping, are we going to buy those, $1,000 Prada shoes, or are we going to find those bargain shoes that look exactly the same at Kmart? I think I'll go for Kmart. That's the energy of Venus in Capricorn. It likes the look of the exclusive, but it's always happy with a bit of a bonus, bit of a bargain. So that can be a thing that now too. But that said, you're also going to be quite discriminating about what you spend your money on while Venus is in Capricorn. You won't just go wasting your hard-earned cash on anything that's deemed remotely frivolous. So big thumbs up for saving and getting ahead during Venus in Capricorn in that sense. Now, I want to spend a bit of time talking about one of my favorite things in astrology, and probably my favorite thing in mythology as well. And that is, and you may have heard me talk about this before, because I absolutely love it. I don't know why, it just really does it for me. And that's the movement of Venus from the evening star to morning star, or morning star to evening star. I need to explain how this happens. It may be a little complex, but stick with me. So here is the sun right now. Now, during Venus's retrograde process, Venus will return and then go forward again. We've already established that that's what happens during retrograde. But by this time, because it's going to take 40 days for this to happen, by this time the sun will have moved up into this zone as well. So Venus, who currently, right now, Sun is here, Venus is here. Currently, Venus is very bright in the sky. You'll see her as the evening star. Let's perhaps begin by looking at how this works. Here is our horizon line. And this is the eastern horizon, this is the western horizon, imaginary line that runs right across the board there. And here come the planets setting down below the horizon line. I'll use the horizon over here, that might work better. This is the setting sun in the west. Sun here going down, down, down under the horizon, and as it does, boom, we see Venus shining as the evening star, looking gorgeous in the sky right now. But as the night progresses, the sun now under the horizon, coming around, all the planets in this case are below the horizon, and then we get to the morning. I hope you can see that clearly. And the sun begins to rise, up it comes, and it's first up. It's up before Venus, so we cannot see Venus all day. Even once Venus has risen, she's still lost in the brightness of the day, the glare of the sun. We can't see her in the sky, even though she is there in the sky. So that's how the evening star works when Venus is, in this case, behind the sun. But what's going to happen during this time when Venus goes retrograde? As I said, the sun will have moved during this time into Capricorn. The sun does not go retrograde. It's always going direct. It's very steady, always moving ahead. So here they are together in this shadow zone of Capricorn. And Venus is moving backwards. So at some point during the retrograde period, she is going to make what's called a conjunction, or she's going to become cazimi with the sun. And then the sun is going to keep on going and move out of the retrograde zone there. And Venus will get back to 11 degrees of Capricorn and then turn direct again. But do you see what's happened in doing this? Here is our western horizon line running across there in your imagination. Here's our western horizon. It's the afternoon, say 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Venus has already gone below the horizon, so we haven't seen her at all during the day because the sun's been too bright. And then down goes the sun at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, etc. Sun's down, we don't see anything. The only things that are in the sky at this point will be maybe Jupiter if we're lucky here, Neptune, Uranus, and the moon perhaps. But what happens in the morning? It's different. Everything has changed. In the morning, the sun coming around, about to come up. Who's up before the sun? Venus. She's become the morning star. And now she's visible in the morning, shining brightly, maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And up comes the sun at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and boom, then she disappears. But she has had her moment of glory for the day as the morning star. That's what we see occurring, and it's such an important component of astrology, astronomy, and mythology. I'll explain the mythology in a minute. So you can see how retrograding Venus is going to change her from a morning star to an evening star. A little bit more on this topic. Venus will become combust during this time. Now, combust means when a planet is within 10 degrees from the sun. Either side, can be this side, can be that side, either way. When a planet is within 10 degrees of the sun, it is not visible in the sky. It's lost in the sun's glare. It's kind of swallowed up in the sun. In Vedic astrology, it's considered that during this time we lose the energy of that planet on the earth because she's no longer visible, or whatever planet is no longer visible. It's combust. And so what are we losing at this time? We're losing the energy of love and beauty and delight and pleasure while Venus is in hiding in combustion with the sun. Lord knows we need Venus on the earth right now So heads up, people, this could be quite a trying time on the planet. We need more love on this planet, not less. Women also need to be more careful at this time, not to be a doomsdayer, but they need to be more careful of predators and adversary type influences in their life. Now, that could be coming from Capricornian energies while Venus is combust. So it could be bosses might be against you, or predatory or something. Authority figures in your life, and even big hierarchical organizations which are ruled by Capricorn can feel like they're against women at this time. So heads up, ladies. It's not just, I'm not trying to be sexist here, because Mars goes, Mars does have periods when he goes combust as well. So the men go through things at that time as well. So I'm not trying to sort of single women out for the sake of it. There are very definite alignments with women and the planet Venus. So when is this occurring? Write it on your calendar. Between the 3rd and 16th of January, these are the dates when Venus is going to be not visible at all in the sky. She will be lost in the glare of the sun. Now, on the 9th of January, kind of halfway through this period, that is when Venus becomes cazimi. We find that Venus will be in an exact conjunction on the 9th of January with the sun. Now, this is a different scenario altogether. This is a powerful day, ladies and gentlemen, to present your requests for love before the king, before the sun, the king of the solar system. Just remember, when she is going before the king, though, she's retrograde. So be very wise with what you wish for and ask for, because she's in that internalized Venus energy motion, and our choices might be a little off. So it might be a good idea in these couple of days now, before Venus goes retrograde, to evaluate, okay, well, what do I want to ask for on the 9th? You'll be in that direct motion Venus headspace and ready to put your requests before the king on the 9th, when Venus is actually in retrograde motion at that time. Now, when this happens, a new Venus cycle opens up. This is when the sun and Venus meet together in the sky. It's a moment when Venusian faculties of emotion and evaluation are impressed with what Dane Rudger calls a new quality of will and purpose. We're starting a brand new cycle with Venus and the sun until the next time we have a conjunction like this, when Venus overtakes the sun or is retrograde. Now, I love the mythology of this process of Venus moving, in this case, this time around, from evening star to morning star. This morning star to evening star to morning star correlates with the story of Lucifer. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful stories in all of mythology. Lucifer, and please don't jump into the whole Luciferian, evil, bad, devil worship, blah, blah, blah. This has nothing to do with that. And Lucifer as an energy has been so maligned for the last 2,000 to 4,000 years. I want to bring the truth out there. I want to bring the ancient knowledge of Lucifer out and stop this stupid BS malignment of this amazing story. Beautiful story. Okay, thank you for letting me jump on my soapbox. Lucifer was the light bringer. Lucifer, morning star. He was also known in other mythologies as Phosphorus. That's another name for the morning star of Venus. And he has these lovely connections to Prometheus, if you're familiar with the story of Prometheus, and Enki in ancient Sumerian and Babylonian mythologies. So that is the Lucifer energy. Morning star, Phosphorus, Prometheus, Enki. Hesperus is when Venus is the evening star. You might have heard of Phosphorus and Hesperus. Now, they're the two opposite types of Venus, the morning star or the evening star. Venus, during this particular transit of retrograde motion, is going to become morning star again after 18 months or so of not. So Lucifer he was the son of, in some versions of the mythology, was the son of the gods Aurora, the goddess of the dawn, and Cephalus. Now, I know that sounds like a disease, but that's how it's spelt, so I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. But Aurora and Cephalus were the parents of Lucifer, and he was known as the herald of the dawn. Hello, morning star. Here comes the sun. I'm just letting you know I'm here as the morning star rising up before the sun, just to let you know the sun's almost ready to come. Herald of the morning. Isn't that beautiful? So this year, Venus, as I've just illustrated, disappears from the sky as Hesperus and then re-emerges as Phosphorus or Lucifer the morning star. Now, think about when the reverse happens, and this is from memory what occurred in Gemini in 2020. That's when Lucifer was the morning star and he disappeared and he re-emerged as the evening star, Hesperus. That energy of Venus disappearing as the morning star and becoming the evening star, it correlates to the mythologies that describe Lucifer falling from grace. He's fallen from being the morning star and become the evening star. Christianity picked up on that myth and that story, which was simply describing an astrological phenomenon. Christianity picked up on that, and that's where we get the demonization of Lucifer. Oh, fell from the grace of God and lost his position in the sky. The fallen angel. Makes sense, doesn't it? The sun represents our ego. Anyone who knows astrology knows the sun is our ego. And as I just mentioned earlier, he's the king at the center of the kingdom. When Venus becomes Kesenya with the sun, and it's like Lucifer going before the king, going before God, maybe going before, when Lucifer is falling from grace as the morning star, going before God and challenging God, the ego of God, saying, I'm as good as God. And what happens? He falls from grace as the morning star and becomes the evening star. That's the biblical story. Lucifer thought he could be God. God said, no way. Lucifer fell from grace. Ego. In angelic law, Lucifer is known as the angel of ego. There we go. But what annoys the heck out of me is that these Christian mythologies did not pick up on the rest of the story. And you need to know the rest of the story in order to understand the beauty of this mythology and how it applies to we human beings so magnificently. So I get really passionate about this because, as you all know, I was raised to think Lucifer was bad and evil. And then when I found the truth, oh my gosh, scales just fell from my eyes. So what is far less talked about is that Lucifer was returned to grace, was forgiven, and was reinstated as the morning star. Look at what is about to happen with Venus energy this January. We can see that Lucifer energy is about to return to grace and be reinstated as the morning star on the 16th of January when he becomes Venus energy is becomes visible again. What's going to happen? They're going to be Kesenya together in the sky. Venus comes before God again. And God says, you're forgiven. I forgive you. Let's put you back in your position as the herald of the dawn. No longer fallen from grace. Forgiven. Welcome back once more to the high place in the heavens that he had. I love this. I absolutely love this. So the 9th of January, Lucifer is before the king. Then he will be forgiven and reinstated to his place of glory as the morning star on the 16th. To me, this is I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is the most beautiful mythology and an example of forgiveness, restoration, and love. The kind of forgiveness, restoration, and love that we should give to one another, and how we can fall from grace because of our ego, and how we can also be restored and reinstated once more. How we can make choices. Venus is a planet of choice that cause us to fall down. Maybe life doesn't work. Maybe everything falls apart. We've lost our position of glory. But things can turn around again and we can be welcomed back up. We can rise from the ashes like the phoenix bird, that mythology. This is beautiful, and what an analogy for our heavy, weary hearts right now who've been going through hell for 2 years to see, thank God, and God knows, this energy might have a big part to play in our rising up into stability in the earth, on the earth plane once more, as Venus returns to her morning star powerful status. Who knows? We shall see, won't we? If you read the story of Prometheus, who, as I said earlier, is a version of Lucifer energy, you will see how much he loves humanity. And maybe your regard for Luciferian energy might increase even more in knowing this. I wonder if Lucifer has been demonized during this patriarchal era of our time on Earth, the last 4,000 years or so. I wonder if he's been demonized during this time because he's associated with Venus, the only feminine planet in the sky. Again, if we are considering the moon as a luminary, and we don't count her, Mother Earth that we're standing on as feminine energies of planets, like the Earth is our mother, moon is the luminary, and Venus is the only planet in the sky that's not a luminary, or not our Earth, that is feminine. Maybe it's a reflection, this demonizing of Lucifer Venus energy is a reflection of patriarchal dominance. I just put that out there for anyone to consider. We are about to enter a new Venus-Lucifer period through this Venus Retrograde Cycle, and I, for one, can't wait. I have Venus-Luciferian energy in my natal chart. Do you? Do you know if you have morning star or evening star Venus in your chart? And they're both quite different, and they both express very differently. And I'm going to conclude this video. I'm not going to do all signs because this has been long enough and there's a lot to take in here, and I'm sure that you've learned something through understanding the cycle of Venus retrograde, and you'll know how to prepare for these dates coming up and make the most for these dates coming up by simply noting them down, noting what I've suggested to do and how to view them. I want to conclude this video by looking at what it means to have Venus phosphorus or Lucifer morningstar energy, or Venus hesperus energy in your natal chart. I'll try and explain how to figure this out, but I've kind of alluded to it already, but quite simply, is Venus rising, if we put our little rising sign here, does Venus sit behind the sun, so it rises after the sun? Or does Venus sit before the sun, so it rises before the sun? It's as simple as that. Which side of the sun is Venus on? Let's say, here, is it sitting in the sign behind the sun or the sign after the sun? Simple as that. I hope that helps you understand. Let's start with the Venus, my favorite, the Venus Luciferian energy. And I'm going to be reading to you from a quote from a wonderful astrological teacher, Michael R. Meyer. And so I will read and quote, "People born during the Luciferian or morning star half of the Venus cycle, they generally let their feelings lead the way, tending to feel and emote first and think later." I totally vouch for that. This is especially true if natal Venus rises before Mercury. People with Venus morning star energy, they are emotionally fresh, spontaneous, and open to new experiences. They're emotionally resilient. Venus morning star people usually recover quickly from emotional or romantic disappointment, while Venus evening star people are more likely to scar emotionally and carry deep-seated resentments because their emotional makeup tends to process and replay scenes of disappointment and hurt. So there's one key difference between the two already. But when a Venus-Lucifer person, especially one born while Venus was retrograde, experiences profound emotional pain or abuse early in life, that person might close down emotionally and assume a protective or fearful attitude towards life and relationships. So keep that in mind. That's particularly pertinent if you have Venus as the Lucifer energy, which is Venus sitting on this side of the sun, and if it is in its retrograde motion. So if you have this, Venus, Lucifer, and retrograde, you have one of the most rare Venus expressions of all. Only 1 in 30 people will be born with that configuration of Venus. It's very rare to have Venus retrograde, Venus Lucifer. What about if we have Venus as the evening star, Venus Hesperus, in the birth chart? Well, I'm going to quote again from Michael R. Meyer. Venus evening star gives a deliberate and goal-oriented emotional makeup, seeking to extract and distill the meaning of experiences we encounter and the ideals formulated during the morning star half cycle of Venus. Whereas emotions and feelings eagerly rushed forward during Venus Lucifer period, they are now more controlled and introverted in the Venus evening star period and in Venus evening star people, though not necessarily less intense. Although Venus evening star people may not show emotion as largely and easily as Venus morning star types, they often experience emotions more intensely because they tend to become more privately and internally involved with their emotions and their emotional life, feeling after the fact, so to say. Venus Hesperus people may take a long time to recover from emotional trauma, thinking about and anguishing over a lost love or a bitter disappointment for years. Michael R. Meyer goes on to say in his work on this Venus, Phosphorus and Hesperus energy, he goes on to say that it can cause relationship issues when a Venus Hesperus person and a Venus Phosphorus person are in relationship together because they have different relationship styles based on their placement of Venus in the sky. So that's something worth considering, and maybe something I'll do a video on at some point down the track. Or if you want to research Michael R. Meyer's work, by all means, I encourage you to do so. He's brilliant. Venus and the Sun will last conjunct or cazimi together with Venus in forward motion on the 3rd of March 2021. And at that point, Venus went from being the morning star to the evening star. She fell from grace. Lucifer fell from grace. I'm very keen to see Venus Lucifer, Venus Prometheus type energy return to humanity and see if it makes a difference now to where we're all at in the world and what's going on with humanity. So bring it on, I don't think Lucifer energy is anything to be scared of or concerned about. In fact, I think this is something to celebrate. Lucifer forgiveness energy, reinstatement energy, coming back into grace. I think we all need a bit of this on the planet right now, and I'm, for one, am glad to see the morning star return, despite how glorious it is to see Hesperus up there in the sky every evening at the moment. So I hope this video has given some enlightenment to you about the purpose and the role of Venus and how it works and what we're in for over the next couple of months throughout the end of December and into January with Venus retrograde in Capricorn. Thanks for joining me for this video. I'll be back with my regular all signs video for you next week. Have a glorious, happy Christmas. Until then.